Councillor Vandendolen.
Yes, on the matter with there was an appeal of the rezoning on Erie Road for the medical building. I declared a conflict of that last December. My wife's on the Harrow Health Team Board.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll make note of that. I need the adoption of published agenda, please. A mover, Deputy Mayor Malash and Councillor Verbeek. And Rob, you wanted to add something?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just a couple of amendments on the agenda. On bylaw 1790, the Schedule A map depicting the Harrow authorized truck routes should show from Sinnisack East from Queen to the easterly limit as being the authorized truck route. And then secondly, bylaw 1799, section 5.1, subsection J, the numeric reference in that section should be to 20 cubic meters, not 2. And that's it.
Thank you, Rob. I need a motion. We had the motion. All in favor? It's carried. Not that I know. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm fine. I'm fine. It was just...
Okay, I need the adoption of the regular council meeting agenda for August 6th.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I apologize. Councillor Bondi, you had mentioned you had a notice of motion? Okay. Yeah, so Councillor Bondi will read it later. I just wanted the agenda to reflect that there's going to be a notice of motion as well.
Thank you. Go ahead, Rob.
Okay, so just need to vote on it. Have you already voted?
Yeah.
Okay. Item 5.1, adoption of minutes, that the minutes of the regular council meeting of July 15th be adopted as circulated.
We're Councillor Bjorkman and Councillor Bowman. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
5.2, that the minutes of the special council meeting held July 15th, 2019 be adopted as circulated.
Mover, please. Councillor Vandendolen and Councillor Bowman. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
Item 6.1 on the agenda, under public presentations, is a public presentation from the Essex Windsor Solid Waste Authority. We have Eli Mattis, General Manager, and Tom Marentet, Manager of Waste Disposal, and they're here before Council this evening to discuss and answer questions that Council may have about waste diversion activities at the regional landfill.
If you'd like to come forward, folks, and make sure you turn your mic on. Thank you. Anytime you're ready, gentlemen, you can start.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council, for asking us to appear before you this evening. For those members of council and staff that don't know me, my name is Eli Mayotis. I'm the General Manager for the Essex Windsor Solid Waste Authority. I've been in the employment of the authority and its predecessor, the Waste Management Committee, since 1991. Accompanying me is Tom Marentet. Tom is a recent staff member with the authority for the past couple of years. Tom's role is the manager of waste disposal, so he's responsible for the landfill and the transfer stations and 2 closed landfill sites. Also accompanying us this evening is Michelle Bishop in the audience. Michelle is our finance manager, so in case there are any questions that arise of a financial nature, then with your permission, we'll ask Michelle to attend up here and answer any questions. We didn't come with any presentation or any handouts. We're here at your request to answer any questions that you may have about the authority in general or waste disposal, or as I hear, possibly even some waste diversion activities or programs. The waste diversion relates to recycling and composting, and that focus of the authority that isn't related to material that's landfilled, so keeping material out of the landfill. So with that introduction, I'll pause there for your questions.
Thank you. Questions from council? I know there was questions brought up in the past. I'm sure there's questions tonight. Council, we asked them to come forward. Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad you made it here tonight. I love talking about waste diversion, and I actually believe that council should have a 1-hour brainstorming session about waste diversion at some point. So any tips you have about what we could potentially do. It's been one of those topics since I've been sitting here the last 6-7 years that we've always wanted to talk about. Ideas from residents that I'm hearing. Can we go to recycling every week? Can we go to garbage every other week? Can we implement green bins in urban centers? Can we look at different ways to do yard waste? For example, in my household, and I consider myself a pretty green thumb, yard waste comes on a Saturday. People that have children and work, they don't get to do their yard waste until Saturday or Sunday. So I have to fight with my significant other to keep yard waste bags in my garage for 2 weeks, because you can't have them outside because they can't get wet. There's not enough room in the sheds because there's all the kids' bikes in there. So what happens in my household, I will publicly admit, is our yard waste sometimes goes in the garbage because it's not easy and it's not convenient for people. So if we really want to tackle waste diversion, I really feel like there's some probably really low-hanging fruit, and that's one of them, right? Looking at capturing more yard waste. I was driving by today and I saw our town staff doing gardening at our public gardens, throwing it into garbage bags. And I thought, we really need to lead by example. I really like some of the Essex Windsor Solid Waste Authority's initiatives on Facebook. I would encourage everybody watching and listening to follow them on Facebook, because everybody is, there's a whole bunch of people that like recycling, and there's a whole bunch of people that say recycling doesn't work, it costs more money. But I think the reason why it costs so much more money is because we're recycling inefficiently. People are throwing the wrong things in the recycle. People are throwing plastic bags in the recycle. I was at a business in Harrow this week having coffee, hint, hint, and I saw the recycle bins out there. And I saw the recycle truck go by, look in the bin, and he didn't pick it up because it was all plastic bags. And frankly, it really wasn't all recyclable material. So even places, businesses that we go into, we think they're recycling, a lot of times they're not. Because along with your recyclable newspaper, people are throwing in slushies, and now it's contaminated, it no longer works. So I've also had requests to see if we can find another, like a yard waste bag, but not a yard waste bag, for garbage, for municipal garbage, so that we're no longer using plastic bags. Is there some other municipality out there that does, and maybe they're a different color, maybe they're light green, so garbage trucks know to pick up these paper bags, they're garbage. I'm not sure. Those are some things. I'd also love, on my first term on council, so I'm thinking 2011, 2012, I went for a tour of the recycling plant. It was really an eye-opener because I got to see why we need to separate it. I'd love for council to have that at some point. I know we do tours of the landfill, and there are some public tours of the recycling plant, but it really is a good initiative. As a host municipality, we should really be leading the way in waste diversion. So I really think you coming here is kind of, we can talk about it. How can we capture more materials? How can we recycle efficiently? And how can we build that relationship to really protect our landfill and keep it around for years and years to come?
Thank you, Council. Deputy Mayor Malash.
Through your worship, I don't know if, did you want to answer some of those questions? Was that the intention, that we were going to have the questions answered?
I think so. Can you?
Thank you, Mr. Malash. I jotted down just at the beginning there from About a couple of references, weekly recycling, garbage every 2 weeks, and green bin program. So I'll talk a little bit about each of those. Regarding weekly recycling, that's probably not something that's going to be implemented anytime. What's happened across the province, there are some programs that are weekly. Essex Windsor has bi-weekly. There's a transition that will be taking place in the near future in the next 4, 5, 6 years, where the producers that are responsible for the products that are in the blue box and red box, where they'll be responsible for the full cost. Currently, there's a sharing of the cost, of the net cost of the blue box program. Municipalities right now bear 50% of the net cost. And I say net cost because there's a cost, as you're aware, to collect the material, to process it in the recycling facilities. That's the gross cost, and then deducted from that is the revenue that's earned from the sale of that material. The revenue that's earned does not cover the full cost to collect and process, so there's a net cost. The 7 county municipalities and the city of Windsor are responsible for 50% of that net cost, and the stewards and the producers, the big corporations, they're responsible for the other 50%. The province has instructed the stewards to start planning to assume the full cost. What won't happen then in the near term is an enhancement to the programs. So anyone that has currently bi-weekly, they won't be able to switch to weekly due to the increased cost. So that addresses that part of it. On the garbage every 2 weeks, that would be a municipal decision. That would be something that would work favorably to cause greater waste diversion. As you know, perhaps residents may not fully recycle. People may recycle, but maybe their bin gets full or they forget and they throw stuff in the garbage. Same thing with organics, with the yard waste, it may end up in the garbage. But if there's refuse collection every 2 weeks, it may cause individuals and householders to then make more and full use of the other waste diversion activities. If you have a backyard composter, you can start using that more. So that's a local decision regarding garbage collection. That's a municipal responsibility, not one of the authority. So Windsor and the 7 county municipalities, they would have to examine that. Moving on to the green bin program. As you're aware, Essex Windsor does not have such a program. There are other municipalities in southwestern Ontario also that do not currently have a program. London is an example, Chatham-Kent, Stratford, Sarnia, and so on. The province has mandated that these programs be implemented by the municipalities that currently don't have them. And they've set a target date of 2025 for that to take place. The province has named the municipalities that would have to be participants in that. Essex is not one of those municipalities, so if Essex wanted to do it, that's fine, they could, you could. Kingsville and Lakeshore are the others, and the criteria that the province used was population and population density to identify which municipalities would be compelled to have a green bin program. So Essex, Kingsville, and Lakeshore wouldn't be compelled, but the other 4 county municipalities would, as well as the city of Windsor. So Windsor's undertaking a study right now to see how they can make that transition. What other municipalities have done, once a green bin program comes into effect, they have then made a switch in their garbage collection to bi-weekly. So once you're pulling out your kitchen scraps, your dinner scraps after, your cucumber peelings and apple cores and all of that stuff, all that food waste, once you've pulled that out of the garbage stream, then you wouldn't have such large volumes of garbage, and you wouldn't have garbage that would be sitting there and rotting, so you could go to every 2 weeks garbage collection. So that's kind of when that happens historically and in the past with Ontario municipalities. They've implemented a green bin program, then they've gone transition. They don't do it right away, but they put residents on notice that garbage collection will be every 2 weeks. So those were the major items at the beginning that I heard Councillor Bondi talking about. If there are other specific questions that I didn't address, I can address those.
Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, through your worship, to Mr. Mayos. So if the communities that, where they'll be forced to go to green bin in 2025 and later, if we did go to an every other week pickup, would it only be in those communities where they have the green bins, first of all? Secondly, I think right now in Essex Center still has, like our Ward 1 has a green bin pickup, but not everybody has the green bins. It was a pilot project years ago, like going back to year 2000 or before that, where Essex Center participated and were able to get the green bins for food scraps and so on. We did look at it later on, and I think, going back to around 2010, we did look at it, and I think the bins cost was around $500 per household. So we thought about it, but we didn't have the money to back it up, so we didn't move forward with it. So I probably want to know where the money would come from to initiate the program, and hopefully bi-weekly pickup would only happen in those communities where the green bin pickup is happening. But one other question, if we wanted to do it in our urban centers, perhaps, rather than our rural, would we be invited to join as well in that program?
Thank you, Mr. Malash. Just a couple of points. I guess I should clarify when we talk about green bin. Windsor and the 7 county municipalities currently have yard waste, so that is part perhaps of what you're talking about in the part of your town where you have a green bin, and people are putting their yard waste in it. If they are putting some food waste, our system isn't set up to compost food waste, but if there are minimal amounts, which I assume that there are, it hasn't posed us a problem, but we're not asking people to put food waste in their yard waste. So when we're talking about a new green bin program, we're talking about related to food waste, and they would be two separate programs because the yard waste is managed separately and composted separately than the method that would be used for food waste. So it would be a separate type of system and collection process. I think you asked about cost. As is garbage and is the yard waste, the responsibility for the cost would be with the municipalities and not with the Solid Waste Authority. There may be some monies available in the authority budget and reserves to help kickstart or provide some education and maybe fund partially some of the cart acquired that could be acquired by the municipalities. So that's that part. I think you asked earlier about the municipalities, if they implemented the food waste, they wouldn't necessarily have to go to, it's their choice, to bi-weekly garbage. It's something that could be considered because you'd have a cost saving on the collection side because now you have another collection cost. You have to collect the green bin in addition to your refuse. So it's not something that's required, and again, it's each individual municipality's option.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. Thanks also for coming. And now, after listening to your questions, I have a handful of, answers. I have a handful of questions myself, and I'm thinking it's best if I just throw them at you and then you can just answer them as you feel. For starters, when Councillor Bondi was commented on some of the new efforts, to stimulate more diversion. I really like the Recycle Coach and the What Goes Where app. Those are really helpful. I think that we should be reaching out to more offices and businesses. Since I started, asking about, a lot of them just aren't even recycling. So maybe we need to focus a little harder on educating them. Now, the manager of waste disposal had suggested at one point that it'd be a good idea for our students to tour the recycling center, the landfill, and the greenhouse, and I think that that would be brilliant, and I'm just wondering if there's any plans to put that in action. And about this, the green bin program, you're just discussing that there are a few local communities that are going to have to implement it by 2025. Now, because, as you said, it is treated differently than the current composting operation we have, would we be treating the green bin product at the local site, and would it be a new and different process? And I had a question here and I can't find it, but I'd like you to explain to council, because I've just recently learned as a new member that some of the councilors aren't really familiar with the gas collection plant that went in, that the Waste Authority put in 2009, that's collecting the gas from the decomposition of the garbage. And the intent of it was to, be fed back into our power grid as a source of power. And currently we're still, I had the numbers written down, but I can't find them right now. We're flaring off all of that methane gas rather than, because, the process, as you people are well aware of, and I'm wondering if you could make some of council aware of how we were bumped in the queue and we still haven't tied into the grid, and if there's any plan for that to get back on track, or if we're just going to continue to flare the methane gas that's collected out of the waste. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Verbeek. So you started off with talking about industrial and commercial, institutional recycling in offices and so on. The authority's main mandate relates to residential waste diversion. We do try to assist with the it's called the ICI sector, industrial, commercial, institutional, but we don't have the staff and we don't have the mandate to do that because it's such a large sector. The province has also focused mainly over the past decades, my time with the authority, and as I said before that with the Waste Management Committee, mostly on the residential sector. The province has now acknowledged that they need to put more pressure on this industrial, commercial, institutional sector to be more responsible with their recycling and their waste diversion. So that ties more to the enforcement from the province and the ministry. So we have done bits here and there to try to assist in that. Mostly tied to municipalities. So if your municipality has a recreation center or libraries, we try to assist that way, but we just don't have the staff and the manpower and the resources to get into the broader sector. Another point that was raised was concerning tours at the recycling center. In Windsor at EC Rowan Central, we have 2 recycling centers. One manages and receives the product from one of your boxes, the blue box, and one from the red box. That's why we ask that they be sorted by the residents at curbside, because in the truck, contrary to belief by some people, it doesn't get all mixed up into the truck. There are 2 compartments in the truck. Yes, the collector is tipping that box into one compartment, but there's a diverter plate in there, and it sends the paper and the fibers one way and the containers, such as this bottle, another way. That way, when it gets to the plant, it's already somewhat pre-sorted. Yes, we do have problems, as Councillor Bondi was mentioning. Residents could do a little bit of a better job by not throwing a container, a pop can in with the newspapers, because we may not be able to sort that at the processing facilities. But getting back to the tour, we do have in the summertime, and I'm not sure if it'll be scheduled for this summer or the fall, where we have a public open house at the facility there at EC Rowan Central, and that's where we show the plants and the other facilities there at that site. There's a household chemical waste facility there. There's a transfer station. There's a public depot, and that's on a Sunday when the site is closed. It's a very busy site during regular their operating hours, so it's not really feasible to have people going through the sites and into the buildings, especially with younger children. So that happens, as I said, that public open house usually was in June. We didn't have it this June, but I think it's scheduled for the fall time. Regarding potential food waste processing, once Windsor does set up a system, and if the 4 county municipalities come on board, and this is all in the early discussion phases. One of the problems across the province is it was very well and good for the province to compel municipalities to implement food waste programs, but there is a shortage of processing facilities in the province, and once the product is created at the end, what becomes of the product? Who can use it productively? What is the cost? Can that product be charged for? So Windsor, as I mentioned earlier, is undertaking a study that they'll release in the fall time as to what processing options there would be. The processing options would not include at this time, because there isn't space at the regional landfill for anything to be constructed there. So that's one of the challenges for the municipalities. It can be collected locally and shipped to, throughout the province to any facilities that may be able to handle it. There is a facility in London that has undergone problems regarding odor, so they've been shut down a couple of times. There is a facility in Leamington that may or may not be able to accept the material depending on what their capacity is. So those are things that are currently being studied and will be studied over the next couple of years. None of this is going to happen fast, and the province is aware of that. They're going to have consultations still with municipalities and with potential users of the product that would come from that. Would it be spread on farm fields? Would it be used by landscaping companies? That has to be determined. Regarding the capture of the gas, and Tom will step in here once it gets a little bit too technical here, but the landfill has piping and a collection system that collects the methane gas that is generated by the decomposition of the garbage. And as Councillor Verbeek mentioned there, what happens currently with it is it's collected and then it's flared to eliminate the greenhouse gas emission effect of it, so that the methane isn't just venting to the atmosphere and causing greenhouse gas emission problems. So that is a system that's approved by the Ministry of the Environment. That's what we're doing now, and unfortunately, it looks like that's what we'll be doing in the short and long term. What we were trying to do with that system, as Councillor Verbeek alluded to, we were trying to get a system where that gas could be captured and then where it can generate, turn a generator and create electricity that we could sell back into the grid to the province. We tried multiple times. As you're aware, you see around you, you see solar panels and you see wind turbines. The province moved in that direction, and it wasn't only Essex Windsor that wasn't successful in getting a contract with the province and with Ontario Energy, but similarly London was not able to, and there were some private landfills that really wanted to capture the gas and turn it into electricity and get it back into the grid. None of those were successful for one reason or another, not related to the landfill ourselves or London's landfill or the private landfills, but whatever selection criteria the province and the Ontario, the Energy Ministry was using at that time. So it doesn't look like we'll be able to harness that, but it is being managed in the proper environmental manner.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? Deputy Mayor Milosh.
Thank you. Through your worship, I just have one other question or comment. And Councillor Bonnie might have brought this up, but I'm not sure. But in following some social media trails that where they were talking about different methods of conserving, doing a better job of keeping garbage out of the landfill and recycling. Someone on the website, and he didn't get back to me, but mentioned that there are other communities in Ontario here, and I'm not even sure if it's Ontario, to be honest with you, but he lived in another community where they were using bags for recycling rather than the containers. And the recycling trucks would pick up the whole bag, and just like we do with garbage for the landfill, they were picking up the whole bag and just tossing that into the truck. And I'm just wondering if you know of any other communities that are doing this, and perhaps there's a reason why we couldn't do that here in our community.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm not aware of any Ontario municipalities that implement a bag system like that. We don't want people to put their recyclables in bags, and you may recall a couple of years ago where we had a campaign out. The bags cause problems at the processing facilities, getting entangled in the gears, getting entangled in the conveyors. We don't have a method to tear the bags open. There isn't a system for that. That's why we ask, and Councillor Bondi was alluding to the plastic bags, not only a big plastic bag, but, don't put your newspapers in a grocery bag and just so that it's consolidated and put that in the blue box. Don't do that. Have no, it's called plastic film. Any kind of plastic film like that, a bag or a bread bag, that kind of plastic should not be in the blue box system. So I'm not sure, Councillor Meloche, where that could be in place, but it's not a recommended method.
I'll follow up and I'll try and find out where this person was talking about. It might even have been in the States, because he didn't say where he had lived previously. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a serious question, but first, I can't let go unchallenged some comments that were made when this started from Councillor Bondi that some people want regular garbage pickup every 2 weeks and the recycling every week. There may be some people who want that, but I guarantee her that there'd be riots if we tried to take weekly garbage collection away from most of our neighborhoods. And I say that as a household that recycles everything assiduously, and we're usually a one bag a week household, but all it takes is a couple of guests or a summer party and you've got 4 bags and the maggots are galloping. So we do not want garbage collection every 2 weeks. And as for the recycling every week, again, I recycle everything, and that truck goes by our house 2 trips out of 3 because we just don't fill those bins fast enough. So I think that would be a waste of diesel, which wouldn't be a good thing if you're trying to do something for the environment. But on to my question, Councillor, one of the reasons we invited you here was that a few weeks ago, some of us had some questions about the daily cover that's being used at the landfill, and that's of concern to us because as the host community, we'd like to see that landfill last as long as possible. Then we understand you're using automotive fluff as daily cover, and we don't, because of changes in local manufacturing and we don't produce that much automotive fluff locally anymore, and then it's being brought in from afar. I'd like to know where it's coming from, whether any of it's U.S. sourced. I'd like to know how much they're paying to dispose of the fluff here. And I also know that construction people are having trouble getting rid of excess soil from construction, and that they're paying other people to dispose of that soil because it's too expensive at the landfill, which is using automotive fluff instead. And we even have, our water treatment plants, like I know from firsthand experience that Union Water had 100,000 tons of suspended particulate that they had removed from water that they've been trying to get rid of at the landfill, but they're limited to only 2,500 tons per year. I'm wondering why we're taking automotive fluff when we have locally sourced biological materials that probably would be better for the long-term life of the landfill. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Regarding the automotive shredder residue, the origin of it is a facility in Hamilton. That's where it comes from. The environmental compliance approval that the authority has, that's what the, kind of the permit and the license is called, that the province and the ministry issues to waste facilities. So that environmental compliance approval, that ECA, allows the authority to use auto shredder residue as a cover material, and it also allows the authority to receive that material and actually in other waste material from anywhere in Ontario. So those are the two, those questions come up. We're allowed to accept from Ontario, although we don't. There is no waste matter aside from the shredder residue that comes from anywhere outside Essex, Windsor. We charge the supplier of that material $8 per metric ton. And those are the two specific questions you had, and I'll pause there if there are any other questions with Tom here about operationally, what are the pros and cons, why we use it, how it's used, and so on. So I'll pause there once I've answered those two questions specifically.
Councillor Berby, you had, no? Okay, go ahead. Yep.
He told me that too. Just to expand on the use of ASR, the shredder fluff that you had originally mentioned, the 2% that you stated, that speaks to the sewage sludge, which is a different component than I think you're speaking of the 100,000 tons. I'm not sure that I've heard that number, but I believe that's grit that would be coming from your water treatment plants. I know we receive some of that from town of Leamington. We do use that for cover material, but that is grit that's been stored for a number of years to allow it to dry out so that, it's useful as cover material. So obviously we wouldn't use the sludge as cover material because of its nature. But shredder fluff we do use as a cover material. We do use clean fill if it's available, and we do use the grit from the water reclamation plants. The problem is that we need a steady supply. And so, there was talk about the correlation between tonnage received and how much cover do we need. We always try to minimize the square area face of garbage that we're working in, only because at the end of the day, we know we have to cover it. So whether it's clay or shredder fluff or some other material that has come in that can be used for that purpose, it makes our job easier. It's less machine wear, less time for the operators. So we will stockpile that material next to the location where we're landfilling, and we'll cover the garbage at the end of the night. So again, we may be in a situation, and landfilling is a very dynamic sport at the landfill. We may be landfilling in a trench one day because we've received some contaminated soil, and we'll strip that off down to the garbage so we have a good hydraulic connection, and now we're basically landfilling in a trench. So our containment area is very small. We have that contaminated soil that we can now use for cover, plus we have the shredder residue or grit or whatever was brought in that we've stockpiled. We don't typically stockpile any daily cover material, but that's the beauty of shredder fluff, is it comes in periodically throughout the day, maybe 4 or 5 loads a day, sometimes more, sometimes less. We will stockpile it next to where we're landfilling, and then it can be easily pushed over. The beauty of that fluff, it's light, and it's being placed right where we need it. If we don't have the benefit of some of that material, we have to truck it from other parts of the site. Now we incur expense with an excavator, the rock truck, wear and tear. We have to maintain and/or rebuild roads to the stockpile site to get the clay to where we need it. And, you know, based on the tonnage, the trip in the rock truck is 25 tons. It may take, 10 minutes to get a load there. So you can imagine over the course of the day, it's an exercise to get enough material to provide cover. And that ASR fluff and other light cover materials also aid in increasing the capacity, the ultimate capacity of the landfill, because it's just by the nature, it compresses, it compacts, so we're not filling up the landfill with a lot of dirt. If we have a situation where we have a holiday or a long weekend, yeah, we'll do our best to haul some clay in to try and get some extra cover on the material. But as a daily cover, shredder fluff really is a good product.
I'd like to thank Mr. Rantet for the comprehensive answer. I live near the landfill, and obviously the covering system works because we almost never smell anything. So that's great. And I realize you can't use sewage sludge. And yes, the stuff I was talking about from Union Water was suspended grit from the lake water, and it is historic. It's been there for many years. And in your defense, it's high in aluminum because of what they use to precipitate the grit, so I know that's a concern for you too. I just ask these questions because I just want to make sure that the local people who need to use the dump aren't being excluded in favor of fluff from elsewhere. But thanks very much.
Thank you. Was there any other? Councillor Verbeek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just circling back around to the recycling, I remember a few years back there was an issue with the recycle symbol on the bottom of containers with the number in it, or plastic containers is what I'm referencing. And our site only recycled certain numbers. And so it was, creating an issue at sorting, right? And we still have people that are seeing that symbol and they're throwing it in the box and it's ending up at the recycle facility. I'm wondering if there's any plans to take more of the numbers that we don't, like say, I'm not sure, is it 5 and 6 we don't take, the different ones that we do? Is there any plans to take more of the plastics, or are we now? And also, I just also wanted to just circle back to thank you for your answer on that gas collection system, but just to also comment that I get that we're meeting the ministry's guidelines in how and what we flare. Clearly, it'd be great if we weren't flaring the methane off, and if we could use this gas created by the waste and harness it and sell it back to the grid for revenue. I remember our past site manager, Ralph Reiser, would come to us and we'd be this close and he'd say, we've been bumped in the queue by wind turbines and solar again. So we weren't ever getting to the head of the queue there with to have it generated into a power source and sold back to the grid. I'm wondering if there's any plans in the future to look at that again and try and push that agenda a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you again, Councillor. Just on your last point, the province has no plans or programs to purchase electricity. They're just not going to do it. There isn't any plan or program. So they've nixed all of that. Regarding the recycling symbol on containers, and I'll bring this to our waste diversion manager maybe for messaging, and this is not blaming residents because we can't know everything about everything, but simply because there is one of those recycling loops doesn't mean that something's recyclable. And So maybe we need to send some messaging out about that. In answer to the question about expanding any materials that are in the program, no, there isn't any plan to expand. No municipalities are going to be expanding really anything that they take. Yes, there's an environmental benefit, but there's a net cost to adding anything to the program, and you need a buyer for the material. That's a problem lately. You need buyers for what is in the blue box. So there's no point in collecting it if no one will then acquire it from you afterwards. I think that addresses your questions.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Vandendal.
Sorry, one quick one that was left over from the last time we talked about this a few months ago. Through you, Mr. Chair, what is the expected life expectancy of the landfill these days? Thank you.
Our current estimate is to 2040. The landfill was opened in 1997. The original plan was for it to exist for 25 years. We've exceeded that, and we'll exceed it beyond that. And how we're trying to make the maximum use out of the capacity is something that Mr. Marentet described, where it's a very technical process. Landfilling refuse, it's not just digging a hole and throwing stuff in it. We try to acquire the proper machinery and equipment to compact that garbage to, as I call it, squish as much as we can into the envelope. So the ministry has allowed us to go a certain depth underground, the low grade, and a certain height. And it's Tom's job and his staff and the people that work at the landfill to make the maximum use of that envelope to get as much garbage as possible to fit in there. So our estimates right now are to 2040.
Any other questions? I just have one quick question. Do we own the property on the opposite side of the road? For future development for landfill?
There are a few parcels across the street from the landfill to the south. We don't own all of the parcels. When I say we, it's the county of Essex, so the authority technically doesn't own any land. If the land is in the county of Essex owns the land. If the property's in Windsor, then the city of Windsor owns it. But to answer your question, not all the properties across the street are owned by the county.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to thank you both for coming very much and answering all our questions, but I just wanted to just make a statement that this 2040, the life expectancy to 2040, I've been a member of the Landfill Liaison Committee for over 13 years, and every year we can thank this Tom, Mr. Marentet, and his predecessor, Ralph Reiser, for their operations and their staff at the site. They're like, every year, we listen to the numbers of the waste and the compaction, and they're just squishing every little inch out of that site that they possibly can. And it's thanks to them that we've got this many years left in it.
Thank you, Councillor. I agree 100% with what you're saying. But thank both of you for doing your presentation tonight. I'm going to need a motion to accept the presentation, please. Councillor Bowman and Councillor Vandendal. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Item 6.2 under public presentations this evening is a presentation on cyber insurance coverage, and this is in conjunction with Information Technology Report 2019-01 which looks for council's approval this evening for the purchase of the cyber liability insurance coverage. Here on behalf of the town's insurance provider is Wally McNeely. He's an account executive with AON Risk Solutions, and he's here this evening to provide council with a general overview as well as answer any questions that the councilors may have.
Thank you, Rob. Anytime you're ready, you go ahead.
Great, thanks for having me over, everybody. Glad to be part of your meeting. Cyber insurance is on the up and up, I would say, in our industry the last few years. I mean, I've been taking care of the risk management services for the town the last 5 years or so. And 5 years ago, cyber insurance wasn't even really on the radar. You know, now in the last few years, we've been seeing other municipalities, Meadford, Wasaga Beach, Stratford. You can look in your local papers in those areas and really see the impact. Criminals are getting more sophisticated with the access to the internet. With malware, I mean, I was talking to Jack earlier, I mean, we can all have the best firewalls in our system, but we're only as good as our weakest employee in the back office when they open up that attachment and let in the virus. So we've been seeing some significant claims. I mean, in the note from Jack, you'll see reference to Wasaga Beach. I think there was a malware ransom on a Monday, a registered letter, and they had their own IT department. And it was only $35,000. Basically, it was the equivalent of Bitcoin, which is pretty standard. So they figured they're going to try to isolate it, get back to business, and manage it themselves. And at the end of the day, 35 days, I think, later, they paid the ransom and about $250,000 in soft costs, outsourcing, overtime, those other things. And that was just, you know, one example. But typically there's lots of extra costs that go in and above beyond a breach in a cyber malware episode. You got the notification to all the staff, files that have been compromised. Now it's regulated that you have to go out and notify all these members that the files have been breached. With the policy in particular that we've put forward with Beasley, it'll respond to 50,000 members or breach individuals. It'll also pay up to $1 million of malware ransom and all the expenses that go with that. It's like a one limit policy. I think the premium, if I'm not mistaken, is about $14,865. So we're looking for approval on that to get the $1 million limit. That way we can put this policy in place. There is a gap in the current insurance program. That's why we're providing the quote, and hopefully the council sees some importance in it. So with the coverages specifically, it's going to cover any regulatory fines, all the forensics that go into it, all the computer assistants, lawyers, all the notification, all the kind of background work to make sure it doesn't happen again, with the forensics behind it. So something to consider. We've been talking about it a few months. I would say most of the municipalities are looking at it pretty seriously in the last year or so, with the percentages of municipalities that have been targeted. I mean, we all have our own email accounts, and we kind of all see how many times people are trying to put things in your face, click here, you know, you get the fake Revenue Canada emails, or the banks that you don't belong to, they're trying to get you to click on certain things. Employees within your organizations are clicking on these things, unfortunately, even though they're told not to. So you can have the best systems in place, but at the end of the day, you can allocate a little bit of money, resources to mitigating, the risk down the road with having all the professionals at your services. That way you can continue running the municipality and not dealing with all the other things that go on, and try to get business back to normal when a forensic, when a cyber episode happens. So I see it with a lot of manufacturers and different industries. Municipalities are not really, they're just as susceptible to that risk as well. There's no industry that's really not picked on anymore when it comes to cybercrime. So there's people all over the world that have, there's corporations that specifically have employees there that make six figures that are just targeting your employees and trying to get into your system. So by purchasing this layer of protection, you can have a little peace of mind. So I'll leave it with you guys. If you have any questions too, with respect to how claims are handled, I can answer those more specifically, but in a nutshell, it's basically a 1-800 number for your team, your administrative team to call, and then they got all the people at their fingertips to kind of run when something happens, so.
Good, thank you. Any questions from council? Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you for coming out this evening. One question I do have, when I first looked at this, I thought to myself, why don't we just self-insure? Because I'm looking at the ransom that was the $34,950, and I'm going, 2 years, we'd have that covered. But then again, once I started reading the report, I realized there's a lot of other costs associated with and all those other items, the background of the lawyers and so on that are attached to this as well. So the cost would be a lot higher than just the ransom. But I'm wondering, I didn't see anything about a deductible in here. Is it 100% covered?
No, there will be retention, if I recall, I think it's $5,000 off the top of my head on the quote. So the first $5,000 would be out of pocket. There's a lot of costs, like you said, that, you know, I was just sitting down with an IT company locally, and they were kind of telling me about what they're seeing. I sat there at lunch and learned with them, and they're seeing generally 7 to 8 times the ransom. That's what they're paying out in soft costs and extra costs, generally. You know, I mean, it all depends on how sophisticated the corporation is, but that's what they're seeing.
Thank you very much. My second part to my question goes to Mr. Barron, our manager of IT. And Jack, I just wondered, you've gone through this obviously, and anything that you feel that we should be covered is covered in this policy if we adopt this?
Through you, Your Worship. Yes, after reviewing the policy, it looks like this is our first go at it as well. So I work with all the other municipalities. We discuss cyber insurance usually at, you know, one of our meetings here and there. So through everything, it looks like it's covered, but there's always, you know, there may be something that's just unforeseen at the moment, but it is very comprehensive.
Again, to Mr. Barron, so are there other, that was my other part of my question too, was locally here, are other municipalities, our neighboring municipalities, are they looking at covering themselves on this type of insurance as well? Or have they?
They either have it or they're looking at it and it has been budgeted.
Any other questions, Councillor Van Endo?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Barron, are there other providers of this insurance? Because this premium seems pretty steep. Thank you.
I believe we just are going through this because that's our main insurance provider, so it's a bundled. If I'm, Rob, if that's correct.
Yeah, the AON's our current provider. This was an add-on or endorsement to the current town policy, and this was the quote. To Councillor Vanderdolen's questions, and perhaps Wally could speak to it as well, is I would suspect that this is in line or better with existing, like from other, the particular insurance company that's being recommended. I don't know if you can speak to whether that's in line with other insurance companies.
Yeah, we're a broker. So Aon is a broker. We would shop out your insurance. So we have a panel of cyber experts in Toronto that basically I sat down with Jack and Robert, filled out an application. They shopped it out for us. There likely could be other options for limits. You know, if you wanted to save money, we basically have a $1, $2, and $5 million limit option. You can reduce that if you're looking at saving costs. Generally by the size of the municipality and the amount of people and files you take on hand, you know, $50,000 limit, the premium basically is payable based on that number of files. So 50,000 files would be a number that we kind of said, well, it might be an effect. If you're looking at reducing the number of how many files they would respond to, you can look at reducing the premium. However, yeah, it's something to consider if you're looking at the price on its own.
Yeah, it's a supplementary question there. So that's about a dollar per head per resident. I'm interested through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Barron, what are other communities paying per population?
That I'm not aware of.
Because I think we should compare that. Just because Midland got stung for $34,000, I mean, for all we know, the head of the yard was running their IT or something. They might not have their own IT person. I mean, there may be a good reason why they got soaked like that. But like, if there's a cheaper way we can do this, I think we should look for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Questions? Councillor Bondi?
If I can, through worship, just to add on to that, you asked if there's other competitive insurance. Ann went through a competitive bid process to be our insurance company several years ago. So this is an adder to that. This is something that we would look to carry moving forward and would be part of that entire RFP package. So no, although we didn't look for specific bids on this, as an insurance company as a whole, they've won our competitive bid and give us good service that way. So,
Councillor Bondi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't like spending the money either, but I think it is something we have to do. I don't like the $5,000 deductible, right? Like, that's like, Just wondering, through you, your worship, to Mr. Barron, is there anything that we do on an ongoing training basis to have our staff recognize when a risk is coming? Like, I get spam emails too, and once in a while I'm like, hey, yeah, I want to go to Hawaii, for $200. So is there anything else that we can do for risk management and prevention in-house that's low cost that make, I want to pay the insurance, but I never want to use it. I never want to use it, ideally, right? I don't want to pay the $5,000 deductible after. So I'm looking for the other risk management.
We constantly look at our filters, our antivirus, our everything. It's luckily we haven't been hit, but it's a matter of when. Lower tier municipalities are the new target because usually they only have an IT department of 1 or 2 people. So, and usually because they're small government, their software may not be up to date, so they're a target. So we constantly look at and review, and we're in planning progress of kind of diversifying our network to pull some things out. So if there ever is an instance that we do get attacked, so we can recover quickly. So yeah, the insurance part, unfortunately, nowadays it's like having house insurance or car insurance. It's just part of it.
If I may, just for a moment, I can talk about just what some other companies or corporations are doing to mitigate the risk for their own staff. I think if that's what you're alluding to. I've just recently sat down with a fellow from a bank, commercial banker, and what he's done with his employees is they've hired a company to sample their staff. They'll pick staff out and they'll try to infiltrate them, have a plan to try to get them to click on clickbait. And from talking to him, he's saying once they center these employees out, that typically 70% of them fail. So, and this is a large Canadian bank. So if you can, I think embarrassment might work a little bit with, getting people to the table, with, but a human error is a big one. And I think once you kind of show the effects of maybe what they're doing, I mean, sometimes it can be it's come across as so harmless, but it can be a major breach. What companies, what they're doing is they basically sit in the background in your systems, and it could be there for months, So the good thing was with this policy also, if there's something in your systems right now, there's no nose on it, they'll pick it up right now. So something.
Councillor Bjorky.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for explaining this, and Jack for helping us to really get a grasp. And I agree with Councillor Bondi. I never want to use it. I never want to use any of the insurance I own. But we carry it for those times when it comes along. I've got insurance on my computer at home. I've got insurance to, we pay, well, not insurance, but we pay for the the firewall, we pay for we make sure we have those things in place. And, you know, we lost everything on a hard drive one time, and the cost is much more than just the dollars. It's the hours, it's the aggravation, it's everything that it takes to come back. So again, I think it's worth having, just because in this day and age, we depend on these systems. We have to have these systems working. If we go down with our system for an extended amount of time, it hurts our residents. So it's another tool that we need to have that protects us. And when something does happen, we've got somebody to back that up. And I agree, the deposit, you could take that trip, but or not the deposit, but the deductible. Thank you for that word. So anyways, I agree we need to go this route. That is the way it is today, and we need to protect ourselves.
Thank you, Councillor Rob.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just following from that on the question about the deductible, the $5,000 deductible is actually quite low by industry standards, and I certainly, with respect to other elements of our insurance package, we have much higher deductibles. Our CGL deductible is much higher than $5,000, so this is actually, by industry standards, a very reasonable deductible.
Any other questions? Councillor Verbeek, you had a question? No? Okay, I think, well, we're going to have a motion to accept the presentation first. Okay, or we could do it all in one if you want. Okay, would you like to do it all in one? Okay, go ahead, make your motion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just that we accept the report and approve the recommendations.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Bjorkman. All in favor? It's carried.
Great, thanks for having me, guys. Leave some cards here if anybody has any specific questions afterwards, okay?
Our third presentation, public presentation this evening, is concerning the Town of Essex Trap, Neuter, and Release TNR program. We have here this evening Ms. Jen DeRook and Ms. Laura Brittenbaugh, and they're here to speak with council this evening about concerns about the TNR program, recent concerns, and actually as a result of those concerns that administration received in late June, council on July 2nd did give direction to administration to review the program and come back with recommendations largely concerned revolving around recommendations, if any, as far as public education and increased or enhanced oversight or administration relating to the program itself, including oversight of the volunteers. So council also has before it this evening Legal and Legislative Services Report 2019-20 on the Trap, Neuter, and Release program with recommendations or seeking direction of council to move forward with those recommended and proposed reforms. And before we go to our delegates, I would be entirely remiss if I didn't also mention that Melanie Coulter, Executive Director of the Windsor-Essex County Humane Society, she's graciously offered her time this evening. So if council has any questions about TNR programs in general or TNR practices or best practices, she's offered to answer those questions should that be council's wish. But first and foremost, we have our two delegates before council this evening.
Mr. Mayor, I just have a point of information regarding Melanie. She's on her way. She's not here. She's not here yet. She's on her way. That's okay.
Okay, ladies, whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and start.
Hello, everyone. My name's Jen, and I live in Tully Meadows on Oak Drive, across the road from where all this took place, where these cat houses were set up and where they were being fed. I'm here just to give you a brief rundown on what happened to us, because I believe that we're not an isolated incident. If caregivers are set up with this program, I believe there are other people out there just like us that are just as frustrated as we were, and what a frustrating 3 years it's been for us. We endured cat urine and feces all over our yard. We had to replace our front landscaping because that was one of their favorite spots to spray. I love to garden, and in my backyard when I'd garden, I'd be picking weeds, and luckily I'm not still having children, but I would pick weeds and pick up cat feces at the same time. So that's kind of a health hazard for pregnant women. So we endured that in our backyard. We also, the program was set up with the TNR being done, but every spring we seem to have an increase in kittens, which doesn't quite follow what should happen with the program, but we would see these kittens, they'd be in our yard, and we have a little terrier who would go out and didn't like kittens very much, so would attack them, and unfortunately my daughter was the witness to this many times. I had to go to the vet many times with these kittens and endure the costs from that. We also, as you can see, we were very frustrated with this. We didn't know where to turn when all this was happening because we just thought, someone's feeding them. What do we do? Don't know what to do. The answer came for us in the spring when my neighbor Michelle brought out the cat houses that were across the road. And the next day, the volunteers showed up to pick them up. We're very angry. We talked to them then. So over the years, it kind of made sense that over the years we noticed an odd car sitting out there with people sitting in it, which we thought was very weird and unsettling. But again, we didn't know who they were, what was going on. But once I found out that they had this set up, I thought, okay, that was them. They were kind of scouting out our neighborhood, and we didn't know anything about it. After this confrontation with the volunteers, I did my research on the program, and I found that feral cats, it's a trap, neuter, and release program, and they bring them back to the area they were released, which is great. But they don't have to be fed. I talked to Melanie Coulter myself, and went on many websites. They're feral cats, they're wild animals, they will survive on their own. I believe in our neighborhood, because of the food being left out, it attracted more. They were telling their friends, this is a great area, come on over, you can live here and get fed, and so we had many cats. We did not see a decrease in the cats. We also, sorry, I lost my spot. Just from my research that feeding them isn't an essential part of the program, and that they have an ability to hunt and feed for themselves. I think that bringing this forth to you as council, I hope that other people with these concerns, like I said, I believe that we're not an isolated incident. Once we brought this forth, now, for some reason, all the cats are gone from our neighborhood because there's no caregiver set up. I think they were moved somewhere else, so someone else now has our problem. I hope that those people, with you guys taking a step forward in this and maybe making rules for these TNR volunteers to follow, that these people will have somewhere to go to voice their concerns. And I hope that the town considers the fact that, feral cats are wild and can survive on their own, and educate the volunteers on this point. There's a human element to this. The neighbors need to have a say if someone's going to set up a feeding station in their neighborhood. You need to have a consensus from everyone around that, okay, yes, we agree, this is great, we'll do this, you can trap, neuter, release these cats, we'll feed them. But if someone doesn't agree with that, I don't believe it should be forced on anybody. We've had I only mentioned a few things that we had to go through, there were many more. Yeah, so anyways, by reading the suggestions that you put forth, I believe that it's headed in the right direction, and I really hope that from what I understand of the TNR programs, that they're very beneficial, and that I hope that if run properly in the future, that it'll be very successful, that you won't have the issues that happened in our neighborhood. I thank you for our time. And if you want to know more about what happened, I have more. I just don't have the time to tell you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi. Is that thing working? Yep. Okay, my name's Laura Brittenbaugh, and I live across the street at 2 Oak Drive. I've lived there for 10 years. And for at least the last 2 of these years, every time I walked out my front door, I was witness to what was going on across the street with the cat trapping boxes, cat housing, cat food, all behind our mailboxes in the bushes, and the nightly feedings with the flashlight, very kind of creepy. But all this was being put up against Michelle's fence and on her property and road allowance. And so I'm the one that started, that took most of the pictures because I felt this was becoming a problem and I wanted to record the situation. So I'm attending this meeting tonight just to share my thoughts about the TNR program that's being run in the town of Essex, but especially in Tully Meadows. This past spring was horrible for all of us. No permission was given from anyone on our street to trap, house, or feed stray cats. It's been an eyesore, to say the least. There have been more cats and wildlife in the area coming to feed on the leftovers. We are all for the trap, neuter, and release of stray cats. It's a great way to cut down on the strays, but still keep the rodents, in the area at bay. But I feel that we all must be informed about what's taking place in our neighborhood. We need to be asked if we want to participate in this program, and we need to be informed about what will happen to our neighborhood in the long term from this, such as if we use the TNR voucher program for the feral cats, if we use it ourselves, are they then microchipped to whoever brings them in? And does that make us legal caregivers of the cats we trap? Because we were told that they have to be fed or they'll starve to death. Or do we call the TNR program for the trapping of stray or feral cats, and then the cats belong to them, which brings us back full circle with the cat condos and the feeding stations. I'd hate to see any residents or someone's curious child or pet getting bitten or scratched by a feral cat or other wild animals lurking around the mailboxes and in around our homes due to the housing and the food being left unattended. In closing, I'd like to say that, I do agree 100% with my neighbor Michelle's recommendations and proposed bylaws concerning the Essex TNR program, as this was a gray area, and we as homeowners shouldn't have to deal with these TNR volunteers ourselves. I think that people should be given the town resources to help in situations, and there should be a clear and publicized manner to get information and to share concerns, and it should be managed by the town. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies, for the presentation. Any questions from council? Councillor Verbeek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, delegates, for coming and sharing your story with us. And I've been following it on social media and talking to a lot of people, and everybody involved has been very passionate. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry that you and your neighborhood have experienced this program in such a negative way recently. And but I don't want to focus on that, okay, because that's all done now, and I'd like to move forward in a positive way. And I wonder if you have had a chance to look over the work that administration has done moving forward with this program, and if you like all these recommendations as much as I do, I think they will work for all sides of it. Thank you.
I was just going to say, I did look over that, and I was happy with those, because, we need to know who's in our neighborhood. They can't come in unidentified vehicles at nighttime, and it's nice to know. And so, I was happy with that when I read it. Yeah, right, it did.
Any other questions? Councillor Van Andel.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thanks very much for your presentation. I understand I say this, first of all, as a cat lover. I have an indoor cat and I feed an outdoor feral cat, but we're in a rural area. Mm-hmm. I understand you had problems with the cats, and I've seen these cat houses elsewhere in the community and saw what they did, but it sounds like almost you had more problem with the volunteers than you did with the cats. Is that true?
No, because we got more and more cats. Like, we only had like 5 feral cats, okay, that was in the neighborhood, and they kept the mice down. We were all fine with that, and having them fixed and released back into our neighborhood, I actually missed them. But what happened was we ended up getting more and more, and this lady was coming out at 10:30 at night and then, shining her flashlight, and all these cats were coming out of the woodwork, cats that I no longer recognized as like our neighborhood cats, and my neighbor did feed them. She topped them off in her backyard, gave them a little food, so it wasn't like they were totally dependent, on mice and stuff like that. They had a little bit of topping up. I am not a cat hater. I love cats. I have 3. One I took off the street, matter of fact, who was injured, and she now lives with me, so.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Councillor Bondi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would start by saying in a perfect world, outdoor cats would be few and far between, because I think everybody says to us, why do you have dog tags when you do nothing for cats? Well, I would love to do something for cats, but I don't think there's political appetite for it, because it's so hard to enforce. It's such a huge file, right? It'd take us 3 years to get through it. So I don't think we're there. I think our administration has done a well-researched report trying to know that there's always room for improvement in anything we do, right? Like, we can definitely improve on it. I'd love to see a bylaw that says if you feed cats, within 3 days, they're fixed. Or, you have a plan to fix them. That's hard to enforce, right? I really feel that feeding outdoor cats without them being fixed is part of the problem. I also am one of those more of a bleeding hearts where I feel like if cats have been fed by humans, they become dependent on being fed by humans too. Right. So to take away a food source, no matter what time of the year, I feel it's kind of cruel. And I've also, since I've been on council, I've been probably one of the more animal welfare advocates throughout the region. I've been approached by, I have people that I consult for snakes and birds. My snake lovers, my bird lovers, hate the fact that feral cats are eating snakes and birds, right? If you talk to birders, songbirds, and people, we talk about mortality of animals, right? The people that talk about, I just was at Ojibwe with the snake skin getting it identified. Those people hate feral cats eating snakes and eating birds. So I do believe that it's better to feed them, not on my property, but where the feeder was. The problem with this situation, from what I see, is there was a feeder in your area, right? And I think the volunteers had good intentions coming in to fix it, with some maybe actions that weren't well known in the community that we're working on, that administration has highlighted. I just want to touch all of my notes here. So TNR is a very humane approach. I haven't heard, I've been on council now 9 years. This, and everybody that complains about animals throughout the county does complain to me a lot. I have not heard about another issue. I haven't, and I hope that we do, right? Because if there's more issues to fix, let's fix them. Hey, let it be known that Essex Council wants to hear about the issues. In 2010, when I was knocking on doors, cats, I will swear on a Bible, was the #1 issue in Harrow. What are you going to do about the cats? What are you going to do about the cats? Now we've been fixing the cats, and it's no longer an issue. Now it's a police presence. But, so I just want to say, Michelle has prepared us really well. Like, you just kind of came and put a face to it, but right. She's done a lot of homework on this file. I believe all of council has read everything she sent. She's put hours and hours into it. I agree with Councillor Verbeek. Yes, we're going to take notes of this, but we do want to move forward because the program has success and it has merit. There's a few hiccups with anything. With anything we do, it has a few hiccups. This is one of them. But overall, I thank you for bringing the problems to our attention. From an outsider not living in your community, I see the issue as possibly a feeder issue, not so much the volunteers. The volunteers, we could have let it be known a little bit more that the volunteers were there. I also remember, I recall, our volunteers are doing a lot. They're doing it for the best interest of the cats. They're driving these cats in. There are other programs that homeowners can do. Before we had this town program, when there was pockets of cats, 10 plus cats, people in the community would all get together and pitch in vouchers. And then that's how that pocket would get fixed. So it was using a whole neighborhood of vouchers for one area. And then the cats were registered back to different people. And I know this firsthand because every year we've had vouchers, I've had vouchers in my name. I've done it. And I've never had one cat. I've done it as part of the program. So this is a solution for trappers to go into areas where cats are fed and fix a lot of cats in that area without using everybody else's vouchers. It's also a program where people that can't, there's a lot of older people, senior people, people that work, people that have kids that can't drive the cats in. This is a tool in our municipality to go above and beyond the normal voucher program that all municipalities have now here. So it's worked out really well. Of course, there's always glitches. And also, Melanie Coulter from the Humane Society is here now, if anybody has questions.
I just have a few responses to your comments, just because you said that the animals, you believe that they're better off being fed, that if they've been fed, they won't survive on their own. And I know Melanie, I talked to her, will talk about this. That's not true. They have an innate ability to hunt. They can survive on their own. So you said that they wouldn't thrive. They will. And she will talk about that. You also said that the volunteers aren't part of the problem. They are a big part of the problem. They're not very professional. We had some horrible dealings with them on social media, and they need to be educated. If they're going to represent you, I would not want these people representing me as a community. They need to be educated how to talk to people, how to have the right facts. TNR is trap, neuter, and release. It's not trap, neuter, release, and caregive. The caregiving is not part of it. One of the volunteers, I won't say her name, will not trap, neuter, and release unless she has caregivers set up. So that is not part of it. She needs to be educated on that, and you can't support that. Your council can't support you in that. Makes me angry. Okay, sorry, that's it. Well, and sorry, any other problems? You say you've never heard any other problems? We had 3 years of problems. We didn't know who to turn to. I think once you get this out there, you'll have more people come forward with problems of people feeding cats beside them and being overrun by cats. Like, I used to like cats. I don't so much anymore. Thank you for your time, sorry.
Thank you. Any other questions? I can just say one thing. I'm sorry you women had to go through this, and we are making improvements. We have made some improvements, and we're always looking to improve on the program. So sorry you had to go through that.
Thank you.
Is there any questions from council here to Melanie? She's here tonight. Has anybody got any questions for Melanie at all? No, seeing none. Okay, thank you for your presentation, and I need a motion to accept the presentation. Councillor Verbeek.
Oh, sorry, just accept the presentation, report, and direction to move forward.
Yeah, I need direction to move forward too, please. Councillor.
Mr. Chair, if I could add a few words to this, to further and better educate the public and the volunteers of the program, volunteers about the program, because apparently, it says just educate the public, it says here.
Volunteers.
I'd like to add, and the volunteers.
And volunteers, yeah. And I'm sure that's what these ladies are looking for too. Yeah. Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Bowman? All in favor? Oh, you have a question, Councillor Bowman? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Melanie is driven out here today. Maybe we should give her a couple minutes to make a few comments if she wishes before we vote on the issue.
We asked if there was any questions, and nobody had any questions here. I asked. If somebody has questions for Melanie here, Melanie, if you want to come forward, please.
Point forward.
Or withdraw the motion? You want to withdraw the motion now? So Melanie can speak? Can you? You made the motion? Okay, withdraw. Okay, Melanie, if you'd like to come forward.
apologize for being late. I had another meeting that ran long. So I'm happy to answer questions. I think the one thing that I want to mention is that this is a really great program that the town has implemented. It expands on the vouchers which are available to residents in every municipality now in Essex County. But this TNR program allows larger scale trapping, and that's a really good way to actually address cat issues. And then the complaints will have gone down. There certainly are going to be pockets of complaints, but if you look at the number of cats that have come into us, and as the only shelter in Essex County that takes cats, our intake numbers are pretty indicative of how many cats are out there. Our numbers have gone down dramatically since the peak in 2011. So these programs and these spay and neuter programs work. So I think it's really important to focus on this program is about fixing cats, feeding bans. The issue of feeding cats is going to come up whether you're fixing them or not, because if you don't have programs like TNR programs to fix cats, people are still going to feed them, and the difference is they're just going to reproduce. Even if you have feeding bans in place, there was just a story in the media about an 80-some-year-old woman who's going to jail for violating a feeding ban in the States. People are going to continue to feed, so the important thing is this program is about getting cats fixed, and that really is having the desired impact. If anyone has any questions.
Councillor Bjorkman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for coming out to see us, Melanie. But a point that needs to be made is that the town and the town's programs do not feed feral cats. We'll have people feeding feral cats, but as a part of our program or anything that we are behind, we do trap, neuter, release. We don't feed animals beyond that. And I think that's an important difference. Yes, you'll have people that have family, they've got cats, but the town doesn't feed beyond the TNR. Would you agree with that?
I completely agree. The program is about fixing cats and then returning them back to the area they came from. And in a large number of cases, the people who had asked that the cats had been trapped are the ones feeding them and are caregiving them and providing care to them on an ongoing basis. And they're going to do that whether you fix them or not. The difference is if I have 10 cats on my property and I can't afford to fix them, and all I can afford to do is go to Costco every month and get a bag of food, and I put the food out, very soon I'm going to have 40 cats. But if the town program fixes my 10 cats, then I'm going to keep spending that money, and I'm going to have 10 cats, and I'm not going to get more as long as I'm feeding responsibly. And over time, I'm going to have fewer cats as those cats get older and pass away. So yes, this program is definitely about fixing them.
Any other questions, please? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My understanding is that if town volunteers are feeding cats, it's in order to trap them, right? Like they're luring them in the trap. And that's my understanding where our town volunteers are, my understanding of the program. I don't know what went on specifically in that neighborhood. I don't live there. But can you just explain before you leave the trap, neuter, return program that the Humane Society is doing? Because if individuals don't want other people to do this, they're more than welcome to trap and neuter return.
Yes, and sorry, your point is correct that there would be town involvement in feeding the cats as part of trapping them, but not on an ongoing basis. So the Humane Society has a few different ways we're involved with TNR. We have done programs on our own where we've gone out and actually trapped cats and targeted areas to try to trap large number of cats in those areas. What we found through experience with that is that that's not where our resources are best used. Our resources are best used providing resources to caregivers and people who are performing TNR. So our spay neuter clinic has a number of things we offer to people doing TNR, whether it's through the town program, whether it's through the spay neuter vouchers that the town offers, or whether it's through people paying on their own. We offer surgeries for $50. We offer multi-cat discounts, so if you have 9 cats, you get the 10th one for free. for community cats, so cats that are going back outside, we have a free microchip and a vaccine and an ear tip we include with the surgery as kind of our contribution to help keep that outdoor cat population healthy. We also allow walk-ins on a limited basis because sometimes trapping can be uncertain, so booking an appointment can be challenging. So those are the variety of ways that we assist with feral cats and TNR at our clinic, and we do a lot of those surgeries. We get a large number of vouchers redeemed, but we also get a large number of people that are paying for those surgeries on their own as part of addressing a problem that they see. The Humane Society is also involved with TNR in a different form called Shelter Neuter Return. And this is a program where if a cat is brought into the Humane Society who is not an adoption candidate or who's clearly an outside cat that's used to living outside, very often it started with just very wild feral cats, but depending on the time of year, it may be guys that are very clearly have been community cats. We will fix them, microchip them, vaccinate them, and return them to the location they came from. And that's a program, it's called Return to Field or Shelter Neuter Return. And this is a way, because previously for those wild cats, our option was to put them down. And so our option is saying, no, we're going to fix them and return them because they can do well out there and we want to see them have that opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Favor? Carried.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, so the resolution is to receive the presentations tonight, receive the report, and for council direction to administration to move forward with the recommendations?
Yeah. Need a motion? Yeah.
Reports from administration. 8.1 is Planning Report 2019-40. Read the former Harold Junior School Property Development Agreement for Anderton Developments Limited. And this is in conjunction with Bylaw 1842, being a bylaw to enter into that development agreement between the town and Anderton Developments Limited.
Need a mover, Councillor Bjorkman and Councillor Guerin. All in favor? And just to add to that, I see the school's coming down today.
(8.2) Planning Report 2019-41. Natural Heritage Conservation Easement for the property located at 2135 McCormick Road. And this is in conjunction as well with Bylaw 1843 to authorize the entering into of that conservation easement agreement.
Mover, please. Need a mover. Councillor Bjorkman and Councillor Verbeek. Any questions on this one? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
8.3, Planning Report 2019-42, update on local planning appeal tribunal proceedings, Laporte versus the Town of Essex. That said report be received, and that council agrees to the adoption of the proposed additional provisions to Bylaw 1759 as part of the proposed settlement to be issued under or from the local planning appeal tribunal.
Have a mover, please, Councillor Bowman, and need a seconder, Councillor Guerin. Any questions? All in favor? It's carried.
(8.4) Planning Report 2019-43, CWAT's funding request for 2020 for receipt, and that council pre-approves the town's 50% share of the estimated $20,000 cost as the municipal contribution under the Municipal Partnership Fund of the Countywide Active Transportation Initiative.
Mover, please. Councillor Bjorkman and Councillor Verbeek. Any questions on this one? All in favor? It's carried.
8.5, Infrastructure Services 2019-10, Stormwater Infrastructure Improvements. For receipt, and that council recommends improving the existing stormwater infrastructure pond in Townsview development in the amount of $98,442.63, utilizing funds from the urban levy, the asset management life cycle reserve, and council contingency. And finally, that council recommends improvements to the Roseboro storm sewer from approximately Clark Street to the Philip Ferris outlet in the amount of $84,100, and utilizing again a combination of funds from the urban levy, asset management life cycle reserve, and council contingency.
Mover, please. Councillor Bondi and Councillor Seconder, please. Councillor Bjorkman. Any questions on this one? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe to our CAO, because there's no director of infrastructure yet. So I think from how I read the development in Ward 4, this storm sewer work would be beneficial whether the development goes forward or not. It sounds like it's much needed. But are we pairing, like Townsview, that's already on its way, but is this improvement conditional on the development going through, or is it going through no matter what?
Through your worship, correct, Councillor Bonnie. It's the Gallows subdivision is well underway. The pond expansion is taking place. The development off of Roseboro, this will be conditioned on that development taking place. When the Harrow storm sewer model is complete, we will have kind of a capital list of priorities of improvements that need to be made, and then from there we can, garner our capital budget and see where we want to focus and spend our monies. But without the development, we wouldn't make that improvement.
Any other questions? All in favor? It's carried.
8.6. Infrastructure 2019-11, results of request for tender for surface treatment 2019. For receipt, and that council awards the surface treatment for 2019 to Shepley Road Maintenance Limited in the amount of $245,185.63, including taxes.
Have a mover, please. Councillor Guerin and Councillor need a seconder. Councillor Verbeek. Any questions? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, probably to our CAO as well. There's only one bid on this. I haven't liked it in the past when there's only been one bid. Is that because crews are super busy around here and it's a small job? That's my first question.
Through your worship, correct, there's only one bid. Predominantly, I guess typically in this area, there typically is only one bid on surface treatment tenders. The local contractor has a good share of the market here. He does from Chatham down, which works out well. There's talks at the regional level of looking at regional tendering. So municipalities looking to group their tar and chip and surface treatment tenders together to make them large enough that maybe entices competitive bids from somewhere else. But that comes with its own set of complications as well. But yes, only one bid.
Okay, thank you. And further to that, I don't believe our shouldering of any roads is included in that, but I was just asked to bring up that if we could look at shouldering some on the Smith and the Smith side road on the Amherstburg side. I can bring this up later, I just don't know when to bring it up, but Smith side road on the Amherstburg side has a huge hole in it. It's ridiculous. It is unsafe. I really believe this council needs to send Amherstburg a note saying the Smith is highly traveled by our residents. I know not exactly Amherstburg residents, but it's a liability to them. I took it today on my way here and they have a cone and a huge hole. And I've had complaints. People have said to me it's really dangerous. So, and Omar Lebrec on the other side says he would love to have it shouldered because he feels that our side of the Smith that we've done by driving on is starting to crumble. So he feels like if we shoulder it, we could save it. And I think we need to get after Amherstburg again.
Thank you, Councillor. The only problem is we all know I directed administration, even to Chris. I think Chris got a hold of Amherstburg on that issue a while back, and they weren't interested in doing anything on the Smith because they say it's our residents that's using it, not theirs. And it wasn't a priority. But I seen that hole you're talking about, and somebody's going to get hurt there. I agree.
Through your worship, just to further clarify, Councillor Bondi, the shoulder on our side of the road or the shouldering on their side of the road? So that's an operational issue, like any operational issue. I think just as I remind council, simply, take a service request order out so that follows to the appropriate department, Norm and Al, and they'll look at shouldering. We've really turned around our shouldering program the last few years. We've got the proper equipment. We use our recycled stone to do it. So we're making strong efforts to ensure that those roads are shouldered. So if there's a road out there that you see that has an issue, like any other issue out there, please let us know. As far as Amherstburg Road, I caution, I know it's our residents that travel that road, but I caution instructing another council what to do in their municipality, I guess, in terms of how you would feel if somebody came to this council and told you guys what to do with your roads and your infrastructure. So, it's something we're always looking to, in the event that we're doing capital works out there again on any of those shared roads, we always look to partner with other municipalities that way. So.
Any other questions? All in favor? It's carried.
8.7, Economic Development Officer's Report 2019-06, Essex Tourism Events Fund applications, that EDO report be received, and that council approves the distribution of $4,000 of funding for the 2 tourism events fund applicants, being the Harrell Fair and the McGregor Mug Run.
Have a mover, please, for that. Councillor Guerin and Councillor Bowman. Any questions? All in favor? It's carried.
8.8 is Legal and Legislative Services Report 2019-21. And this is with respect to bylaws 1790 and bylaws 1799. Both of those bylaws received 2 readings at the July 2nd meeting. And since the July, and if I can have council's indulgence, I provided an overview of the bylaws themselves back at that July 2nd meeting. But at that meeting and subsequent to the meeting, we've received some feedback and comments. So what I was hoping just to run council through with respect to both bylaws is the recommended amendments that have come as a result of that feedback from both the public and council. So if I can just focus on, firstly, bylaw 1790, the heavy traffic, the bylaw to regulate heavy traffic. So administration met and we reviewed further, and so these are some of the recommended amendments. The first was just a point of clarity, just to make it clear in the bylaw that this only applies to municipal roads, not county or provincial roads, and so certainly that clarification's been made as part of the amended version of the bylaw that council has before tonight. There was also concerns that this bylaw could or would unduly capture heavy truck usage for certain smaller or other residential uses. So as a result of that, we have in this bylaw some proposed changes to address that concern so that it's not capturing those smaller residential applications. So in the proposed amendments, which are highlighted in yellow for council's review purposes, we have exemptions in Part 8 now that for recreational vehicles, or the operation of a heavy traffic vehicle for the purpose of, making a delivery or supplying a service to a residential premise, on a location that's not on an authorized truck route. So for those residential delivery purposes. And even with that, with that exemption, there's still latitude given to the director that if there's multiple or a series of heavy traffic vehicle movements for those same or similar purpose, the director would have the latitude or discretion to address that exemption and possibly deny it if it's because we're trying to achieve 2 things here. We're trying to ensure that it's not overly restrictive. But at the same time, you know, we're also trying to assure that, you know, that it's not abused, right? So there's always that potential that it could be abused. So it was felt that it was important to allow for that discretion with the director. And then a couple of others, you know, a similar exemption for a common scenario that I didn't think of when we originally drafted the bylaw, a heavy traffic vehicle that may in fact be housed at a location off an authorized truck route and may actually need that route. So think of a truck driver who's coming home at night, and so, you know, they're not, the intent obviously is not to capture those kind of movements for that kind of purpose. Thirdly, there was a recommendation to add Hanlon Road from Victoria to Fairview as an authorized heavy truck route. So we've added that back to the schedule of the bylaw to reflect that in the map accordingly. Then the fourth change that we are recommending this evening, the bylaw in Part 8 already provided to the director discretion to provide exemptions, but we clarified this further so that the director can in fact either on an indefinite basis or on a case-by-case basis allow an exemption to certain heavy traffic vehicle movements from a particular business or a particular commercial operation. It was felt that this would be the more flexible way to proceed as opposed to opening it up to any and all heavy truck traffic on the, and by making it an actual authorized truck route. So subject to the director's ability to grant an exemption to a particular commercial operation or to a particular business, it would still otherwise, you know, it would still otherwise not be an authorized heavy truck route. And so there would be a little bit of control from that perspective. And then lastly, the other piece of feedback that came on this one was the current bylaw either did not contain an exemption for or make it clear that the intent's not to regulate heavy traffic use related to agricultural purposes in the rural areas of the municipality. And that was part of the discussion at the July 2nd meeting, and we acknowledged that you know, the black and white, I guess, of the bylaw as drafted on July 2nd could possibly capture that. So we've expanded the exemption to allow for heavy truck route traffic in the rural areas, only when, you know, that's part of or incidental to the operation of a normal agricultural practice. There's no necessarily catch-all definition for what is a normal agricultural practice, and so once again, we have that possibility of that exemption being abused or misused, and so that's why, again, the amendment has the Director of Infrastructure with the right to make a determination as to whether that exemption, in fact, should be granted for that particular use. But it does clarify it as far as from an agricultural point of view that we're just focusing on the urban centers. So that's the heavy traffic bylaw. Yeah, if council has particular questions on this one, and then I can provide a summary of the recommended changes on the other bylaw.
Your worship, to Mr. Auger. So one question that I have is, what about water trucks that provide water to homes where they're on cistern rather than water system?
So I would think that falls under the exemptions for small residential use. As so we have the operation of this is section F in part 8, the operation of a heavy traffic vehicle for the purpose of making a delivery or supplying a service to or at a residential premise or location that is not on an authorized heavy truck route. So I think it would allow for those type of residential delivery scenarios. Oh, sorry, Chris.
Go ahead, Nick.
Thank you. Through your worship, yeah, the struggle we had was really trying to allow people to do their business, you know, maybe get a driveway poured, get a little mulch, get a cistern of water, and still protect our roads from the guys that are getting 30 loads of concrete and fill and those types of things. So we were bouncing around, maybe a permitting process would pick that up, right? And when you get your driveway poured, you need a permit to have your driveway. But if you're completely concreting your backyard, you don't need a permit. So that this allows us potentially, okay, you're getting 1 truck or 2 trucks of mulch. Okay, fine. That's not what we're looking for. You're getting 15 trucks of concrete. Okay, this gives me some teeth to allow for that. So it was really a bouncing game between allowing people to do their day-to-day business and what we consider normal household activities. And I think the intent of the old bylaw tried to do that by saying it exempted any construction activities taking place at the home. Well, we all know where that's led us down. So we had to try and finesse that out to pick up the abuse of it and allow for the water truck delivery day-to-day stuff. So just a little bit of what we went through trying to get there.
And one other question, and you kind of touched on it, but I just want to give you a scenario and tell me how this works. So we have someone who loads, and at the end of the day, he loads his truck at the end of the day and brings a full load home on a residential street where there's parking allowed, but on a street that's a side street that's not, like it's overweight, the truck is overweight, but he's coming home to his personal residence on a regular basis, leaving at 5 a.m. in the morning or 4 a.m. to head to his final destination where this load's going to be dropped off. How would we handle that in this bill?
So right now, the exemption would provide an exemption for that scenario. I mean, there would be a requirement that, that when they're accessing and leaving, that they drive on the roadways that form that most direct accessible connection between where that vehicle's housed at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day and the most direct connection to the authorized heavy truck route. But that would allow for that type of a situation.
Thank you. I just want to be aware of what's allowed and what's not. Thank you. I was asked the question, that's why I asked.
Any other questions? Councillor Bondi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of the correspondence that we received right at the beginning of the meeting, is there any merit in the points there? Like in bullet point 1, is the word reasonableness something we should include in point 2? When the owner of the property can't do it, can the company or person?
So also through you, Mr. Chair, those are comments received, I guess, with respect to the fill permit bylaw. If council's fine, I can just touch upon the amendments to that one.
I'll wait till then, but I do have one thing. My other thing is, I think we've done a really great job with this, but we don't have a director in place right now. So are we passing this ahead of the time where the director gets to look at it? Or is our director just going to, you feel like he's going to be okay and in queue with any of this? Because he's going to have to be the yay or the nay guy at the end of the day. And so we're slapping a big file on him the first week he gets hired going, this is yay, you got to do this.
Go ahead.
Through your worship. I'm still here, right? So I'm here, Norm's here, Al's here, Richard's here, Rob's here, all the people that put the work into the bylaw and understand what's going on. I actually had a discussion with Chris today. We brought this up and we discussed this. So he's well aware of the issue and the activities. So I don't see that being an issue. If there's something that happens, and then like I said, I'm still here. I can make these exemptions. I can make these, for these home businesses and these people that are running, like some of the issues that were brought up through emails. These are how we're trying to pick those off.
Councillor Bjorkman.
I was going to say, the new director inherits all of Mr. Nepsy's bylaws, so this one really isn't any different. We're just passing it now, but you're going to have to get up to speed real fast on all of them.
Any other questions? If I may, I think we should include in that bylaw for heavy trucks, I think it should be stated in there where the driver, I know of a couple of steel haulers that load, like you said, Deputy Mayor, and come home at night and they leave early in the morning. I think it should be stated in the bylaw they must use the shortest route. it should be in that bylaw.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, there is language to that effect. It talks about the most direct accessible route to the first authorized heavy truck route. So through you, Mr. Chair,
I need a vote on it. All in. Are you going to want to do them both?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I guess the proposed approach was, it was going to provide a summary of the suggested amendments to the fill permit bylaw as well.
Okay.
And then after that, council could consider receiving the report and perhaps third reading to the two bylaws. So with respect to 1799, which is the fill permit bylaw, and so just a couple of recommendations as a result of the public feedback process and once again, the feedback received from council July 2nd onwards. One of the first items of feedback that was given was that it didn't appear that this bylaw provided an exemption for agricultural uses. And the original draft did make reference to Section 142 of the Municipal Act, which does specify a wide range of exemptions for which the town can't regulate as it relates to fill and alteration of grade. And so in order to make it more transparent and clear, I took the provision straight out of Section 142. I believe it's the Section 5 of the amended bylaw, A through H, have the actual same exemptions that Section 42 of the Municipal Act has. And so that does include use for agricultural purposes as being one of the legislative exemptions. So there's legislative exemptions, and then we, at the back of the same section, we have a couple more recommendations that come out of that. So that was the big change, was taking the body of the exemptions permissible under the Municipal Act and putting it right into the body of the bylaw itself. The second piece of feedback that was received related to concerns that the requirement, once again, and kind of similar to the heavy traffic concerns, the requirement that taking out that fill permit would capture your smaller residential activities, activities that shouldn't otherwise be, caught by as wide sweeping of a bylaw. So to that, we did amend or make a couple suggested amendments to the bylaw to provide for that. And just to kind of, the first one relates to exemptions for what they call land disturbances associated with minor gardening, landscaping incidental to residential uses. Once again, as part of a continuing theme, with discretion to the director to make a determination as far as whether this exemption shall apply. So under Part 8, I guess, under Section 5 exemptions, A to H are the legislative exemptions for which, the town wouldn't have that discretion. I and J are just exemptions that we're proposing this evening. So the first one relates to minor gardening and landscaping incidental to residential uses. The second, same objective is so as not to capture those small, carrying of fill for small residential purposes. The second one relates to exempting the removal of topsoil or placing of fill where the aggregate quantity of such removal or placement on any one lot does not exceed 20 cubic meters in any period of 3 consecutive months. So that was designed once again to try to not capture those smaller applications. And then finally, as Councillor Bondi brought to council's attention, we did receive a letter with additional feedback. I just received it a few hours ago. I really haven't had time tremendously to look at it, but I can comment generally. I read it just quickly just before the meeting. And it's actually feedback we had solicited originally from this party probably back in May of this year, but we just received it this evening. But I can comment generally. The first suggestion for feedback is, as Councillor Bondi specified, is the requirement, or asking that there should be a reasonableness qualifier. And so what they're stating there is there's various sections of the bylaw in which it states at the discretion of the director. So certainly as part of an amended bylaw, should it receive the third reading tonight, we would ensure that it does have that reasonableness standard, and so it would merely state at the discretion of the director acting reasonably. And so certainly we will ensure that the amended bylaw has that in all aspects. The second comment is with respect to the concerns about the owner having to provide a road damage undertaking agreement. The definition of the owner under that bylaw relates to, the assessed owner, the registered owner of the property, or their authorized agent. And so once again, I think that would provide the director with discretion to either require that undertaking from the owner direct, and in some situations from the contractor for hire that the owner has hired. But one of the key provisions here to enforce in this bylaw with respect to the owner is the ability, if there are costs incurred, the ability to seek those costs either up against security that may have been provided or up against taxes. But there is that latitude based on the owner to consider the authorized agent to provide that damage undertaking, or the owner, or perhaps both, and that would be at the director's discretion. The third comment states that security is cash, certified check, or letter of credit, and with the recommendation that a bond option be available. So once again, the wording of the bylaw has that flexibility. It states security is cash, certified check, letter of credit, or such other credit as may be specified. So if there were circumstances in which the director thought that a bond was better security, then the director would have that ability to do so. But certainly, I would make the case that, security of cash, certified check, or letter of credit would be, definitely more recommended than having to go through the bond process. But certainly, the option is there. And then the last comment states that work carried out by the town at cost plus 25% is excessive. We believe that the cost plus 10% is more reflective. So I'm not sure if this is an old bylaw that was being reviewed, like an older version, maybe from May of this year, because I don't believe the current bylaw makes a specific percentage. It just states cost incurred shall be recoverable as taxes or shall be recoverable as an offset against security provided. But as far, the issue of cost and what the proper percentage should be as far as administration, that would be at the director's decision, acting reasonably, as we stated earlier. But I'm not aware of the bylaw that council has before it actually speaking to 25%. So that's kind of my comments on that. It would be council's option whether they wish to give third reading to this bylaw as amended, as noted this evening. I guess alternatively, council could direct us to come back with this final version of the bylaw at the next meeting. But certainly, council has before it the amended version and could certainly give third reading to that if that was their wish.
Thank you, through your worship, to Mr. Ogier. So in item number 2, owner of a property provide a road damage undertaking agreement. Mm-hmm. Is there any reason why we couldn't have the ability to say, we want you to have $1 million or $2 million worth of insurance coverage for that?
And certainly, so as part of the fill permit, and even with respect to and I know I'm bouncing back and forth between bylaws, but even with respect to the heavy truck bylaw, that is part of the requirements, is to provide a certificate of insurance. I think I would have to check now, as far as the limits of the coverage. I want to say it's $1 million or $2 million, $2 million. So we do have that, yes.
Okay, thank you. And also in item number 3, I don't understand why we wouldn't put the bond option in there, because I know a lot of larger companies, perhaps someone like Sterling Ridge Infrastructure would have, that would be their normal process to go through a bond. Is it that much more of a lengthy process, or?
So through you, Mr. Chair, generally, a bond option I would recommend a bond option might be more attractive in situations where larger amounts of security are needed. And I don't know what that magic number is. It could be as an option, but certainly, and having a little bit of experience, past experience in this area, going through, making a claim on the bond and going through the bond process can take quite a while with no guarantees of success. But I would only, and that's why I left the bylaws being flexible. There's certainly that option to go down that route, but certainly if the opportunity for, either the owner or the contractor for hire to provide a letter of credit or cash or some other security, because it's going to depend on the situation. The security provided could be very nominal in some situations or possibly waived by the director. Other situations, might speak to at least given the director the ability to think about requesting a bond. But I mean, if those other forms of security can be provided, I definitely wouldn't recommend going through the bond process.
Okay, so that's something administratively we prefer to stay away from, is the bond then. Number 4, the 25%. I'm just wondering where the 25% comes from, because that does sound rather large to me. Not that it's wrong or anything, but yeah. I'm just wondering where that number came from. What was the
Mr. Mayor,
methodology behind it?
Yeah, it might have been through an old draft bylaw that we had initially circulated. So the 25% may in fact had been from a prior bylaw. But I do take note, of your comments that the 25% might be excessive. I don't know if our CAO in his experience has seen a range from 10% to 20% as far as administrative, because that's what you're trying to recover largely is those administrative costs.
Through your worship, yeah, I just searched it. I think it was from a previous bylaw, as Mr. Auger noted before. This bylaw was circulated, and even Mark noted in his letter to you guys that he did receive this in May. He's just getting comments to us now. So based on our last council meeting, we've gone back and changed it and dissected and fixed all those things or amended all those things that we heard from council. So the 25% is not in there. But on that note, I think the reason that was in there before, similar to, when we have to cut grass for people and when we have to fix roads for people, these aren't, although they're operations of the town, it's not what we had planned to do this year. So I don't want to say it's a penalty, but it's there to, cover those costs and ensure that we're protected and we take care of those things that we normally wouldn't be doing. So, as an average day-to-day road fix, sure, but on something where we've given you a permit and you've damaged our roads and now we have to go fix it on your behalf, it's a bit of a fee, yeah. So, but again, it's not in this bylaw, as far as I know.
So we have no set value in the... No. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I don't know. Councillor Bjarkman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify, so we're looking at the maps for the truck routes and things are all part of this bylaw. So there was an email earlier and there was brought forward with regard to Sinisac Street West. So I'm just noticing, on the map here, it's still there, but did we decide that Sinisac Street West was no longer going to be part of the heavy truck route?
So through you, Mr. Chair, and actually I spoke to it briefly at the top of the meeting. This map is incorrect. The map should only be indicating the authorized route being Sinnesack Street East from Queen Street to the easterly limit. Going west should not be an authorized truck route, but further to one of the exemptions noted under the heavy truck bylaw, there would be the director's opportunity to provide that limited exemption for a particular user.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I'm going to ask council, do you think, Councillor Vandenbroek.
Just a quickie through you, Mr. Chair. That western portion of Sinnesack, how many trucks use it per month on this limited basis?
Through your worship, right now, none, technically. I think what happens on Sinnesack West, or has happened in the past, you get some rogue truck drivers that are used to be accessing Essex. Essex is no longer there. The route has stayed. You know, you've got the depot there that has a driveway on Sinnesack, but again, we would prefer they enter off of Queen. If there's something that's happening on Queen and they need an exemption to be able to come off Sinnesack and enter the driveway to the gas bar, okay, or to the silos or something. That's where we said, let's pull it out, and if there's something that's special needed, that they can talk to the director. You know, we've got the water plant there, so we're exempt anyways. The other thing to note, on Sinnesack, you do have an access. There is an access to the large parcel which was formerly Essex. There is a driveway there. Is the driveway large enough to house, to be able to take a truck through there? No, not currently. Will something change in the future? Maybe, but we decided that that would just be a case for a special exemption.
Any other questions? I got a question, Councillor. Are we ready to pass these bylaws, or do we need some change, a few more tweaks on these? Are we ready to pass? Okay, I need a motion then to pass bylaws. Motion, Councillor Vandenbroek.
So just to receive the report and third reading to the bylaws as amended.
Yeah. Councillor Vandenbroek and Councillor Verbeek, all in favor? It's carried.
Item 9 on the agenda, any reports from our youth members of council?
There are no reports this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Item 10, any county council updates this evening?
Go ahead.
I have about a half an hour's worth here. No, we're going to skip that part tonight. Thank you.
Okay, going to receive the correspondence, all of it.
Item 11.1, correspondence to be received, that the correspondence listed in 11.1 be received, and so this is proposed as on consent, and of course, as always, with councillors further having the opportunity to speak to any particular piece.
Yep, all of them, eh? Could I have a mover on these, please? Need a mover. Councillor Bowman, seconder. Deputy Mayor Malash, any questions on any of these? No? All in favor? It's carried.
11.2 is correspondence to be considered for receipt or receive and support. 11.2.1, resignation from the Municipal Heritage Committee, that the said resignation be received with regret and that a letter of appreciation be sent.
Mover, please, Councillor Bowman and Councillor Bjorkman. All in favor? Question, sorry. Councillor Vandenbroek.
So through you, Mr. Chair, this is all of 11.2, all of these items?
No, just the one.
Oh, I just
11.1.
Yeah, thank you. Just one. Okay.
11.2.2 is correspondence from the Attorney General of Ontario concerning joint and several liability and insurance consultation. So this is an invitation from the Attorney General asking municipalities to participate in the government's consultations. And there's a questionnaire that they're asking municipal administrations to fill out and provide as part of this consultation process. So they're asking that the correspondence be received and that administration be directed to participate in this municipal consultation process.
Need a motion to receive. Councillor Bjorkman, seconder. Councillor Bowman. Any question on this one here? Receive and report. Receive and report, yeah. All in favor? It's carried.
11.2.3, correspondence from the Township of McKellar, that said correspondence be received and that if council chooses to support, be received or received and supported, and that if council chooses to support this resolution, the appropriate letter of support be sent.
Mover, please. Councillor Van and Deputy Mayor Malash. Any questions?
Receive and support.
I would like to have our local
Okay.
So receive and support.
Okay, receive and support it, please. Motion. All in favor? Carry.
And 11.2.4 is correspondence from the municipality of Nebing concerning the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund for receipt or receipt and support, and if council so chooses to support, that the appropriate letter be sent.
Motion to receipt and support. Have a motion? No? Deputy Mayor Malash? Seconder? Councillor Bowman, any questions? Councillor Vanendon.
Just through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to say I oppose this because taxpayers know the province has been dealing with a monstrous deficit and has to be cut. We got to do our part. I don't think we can ask this. I'll be voting opposed. Thanks.
All in favor? Opposed? You want that noted? Okay, Councillor Vanendon. Thank you.
Item 12, committee meeting minutes. That the committee meeting minutes listed in item 12 be adopted as presented with support for the recommendations noted therein.
Mover, please. Councillor Verbeek and Councillor Guerin. Any questions on it? Councillor Bjorkman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to the report here from the Essex Accessibility Advisory Committee. I've got a number of good recommendations here, and some of these things we're already doing. The first recommendation is to promote our CIPs to the Chamber and to the BIA, which are things that are happening, and then to have administration report back on the feasibility of adding a second handicap spot on King Street, which is something for us to look at. We talked about accessibility earlier and how do we determine, we have a formula for what happens in a parking lot, but not necessarily street parking. So somebody's looking at this and having an issue, so I think it would be great for us to go and look at that and see if that is something that we can do. The third recommendation is to receive, to have one of our staff members receive the Rick Hansen Foundation Accessibility Certification Training. Or at least somebody from our county should have that as we're doing our planning and stuff for our buildings, our residents, our residential areas, to have somebody with that kind of knowledge. So I think it'd be interesting to take that to the county and see, do we have somebody already on staff in our planning that's part of the activities that we do that has that training in place, and to make sure that we're following through with the latest information we can have in servicing our accessible community. And number 4, there is a conference in Toronto, October 31st, November 1st, and they're looking for authorization to have a committee member or administration member go to that conference, and I think that's well worth the price of the conference. We should authorize them to go ahead and do that.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? Councillor Bondi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to our rep on the Accessibility Committee. On number 4, authorization to go to the conference, do they just want to have a courtesy of coming to council? Because really, I thought they have a little bit of a budget, and nobody really around here asks anybody when they want to go to a conference. They just go. And I would hope that that committee feels comfortable sending 1 or 2 reps, whether it be a council rep, the chair, or a couple committee members. I believe it's worthwhile, and that committee doesn't spend a lot of money. So I don't know.
Just in answer to that, yeah, they just felt necessary to bring it to council. I think they just want to show the work that they're doing, the things that they're trying to do, and make sure that the public's aware that there's a committee here that's doing this work. I think it was more that.
Fantastic. I think that it's great work coming out of our committee, and I look forward to seeing recommendation number 2 vetted out. I know there's a couple business owners I've sent that little picture of already in Harrow, and they're already in support. So good work.
Any other questions? Doug, did you want to speak to this?
Your Worship, just quickly, this committee does have a budget for conferences, so we'll make sure there's at least one member going.
Thank you, Doug. Any other questions? We got to vote on this. All in favor? Carried.
13.1, that the May 2019 bank payments report be ratified as submitted.
Mover, please. Deputy Mayor Malage and Councillor Vandendolen. All in favor? Carried.
And 13.2, that the June 2019 bank payments report be ratified as submitted.
Mover, please. Councillor Bjorkman and Councillor Guerin. All in favor? Carried.
Under notices of motion, we have 2 notices of motion, one added to the adoption of the published agenda this evening. Both notices of motion are for presentment only. They will be brought back for council discussion and action at the September 3rd, 2019 regular council meeting. The first notice of motion, as moved by Councillor Bondi, that council have a discussion about tightening the policy of proxy voting, fixing the use of corporate resource bylaw and sign bylaw. That's 15.1. And then 15.2, as just added to the adoption of the published agenda this evening, is a notice of motion for presentment. And if Councillor Bondi could state her motion for us.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, that council give direction to the Town of Essex Animal Control Officer that any animal running at large that is apprehended by the Animal Control Officer and in need of medical attention, that the Animal Control Officer be authorized to release the animal to the owners or deliver the animal to a veterinarian within a reasonable amount of time, provided the owners are willing to cover the cost of vet fees. And I'll send that to you.
Item 16 on the agenda, any reports and announcements from the council members this evening?
Thank you, through your worship. Yes, I'd like to let everyone know that the Essex County Steam and Gas Engine Show is this weekend, their 35th annual show. It's going to be held at Coan Park on the grounds that where they have their museum, Steam and Gas Engine Museum, and the grounds surrounding there and throughout Coan Park. If you can get out there, it's August 9th through the 11th, noon till 5, I believe, on the Friday, and then till 6 o'clock on both other evenings. There is a parade on Saturday morning. Parade starts sharply at 9 o'clock from the parking lot in front of the Essex or McGregor Community Center and Library. And all councillors are invited to be there. We will have a truck with candy to distribute, but I know it is nice and early, so you shouldn't have any chance of interfering with other duties that you have that day, hopefully. So if you want to come out, you'll get a good view of a lot of tractors and good people. Again, it's a bit of our agricultural history that goes on that weekend. And we should be proud that the Essex County Steam and Gas Engine is actually part of the town of Essex. So come on out and help us celebrate, again, August 9th through August 11th this coming weekend. And I will definitely be there. And if you can let me know whether you're going to participate in the parade, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Guerin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, congratulations and a big shout out to Coach Glenn Mills and the Essex Ravens football team. They just won another provincial title, varsity champs, defeating Ottawa over the weekend 24-6. So big shout out to them.
Thank you. Councillor Berby?
Nothing to report tonight.
Councillor Bjorkman?
All set.
Councillor Bondi? Councillor Van Endolen?
Yes, thank you. I've got a donation for Parks Department. It's an annual donation, comes from the Harrow Tennis Club. And they just wanted to pass along the message that they're grateful for how Parks fixed their tennis courts. If you remember way back in May when the snow melted and the icebergs disappeared from Lake Erie, they weren't able to play tennis because of the heaving. And the repairs to the courts were delayed by the weather, but they were done. They're fantastic, and the club is delighted that money's being put aside for a new court eventually, and they just wanted to remind other users that they could donate too. So, thank you.
Donation for Clean Road. Yeah.
Councillor Bowman? Nothing. One thing to say about the Colchester Family Day. We didn't have the fireworks, but I'm working with administration to set a date to have the fireworks one night. So, and the event was very successful. There was a lot of people. There was more people this year than last year. It's getting bigger every year. I think people enjoyed the music and the activities for the kids, and hats off to Doug and his staff for one heck of a good job down there. Thank you very much.
Item 17, bylaws, 17.1, bylaws for third and final reading, 1824, to provide for the Sinningham Street drain.
Mover, please. Councillor Bowman and Councillor Van Endolen. All in favor of that bylaw? Carried.
1840, for third reading as well, to confirm the proceedings from the July 15th regular council meeting.
Mover, please. Councillor Bjorkman and Councillor Guerin, all in favor? Carried.
For three readings this evening, bylaw 1838, to appoint a Director Infrastructure Services for the town of Essex.
Mover, please. Councillor Van Endolen and Councillor Bowman, all in favor? Carried.
And for two readings, bylaw 1844, to confirm the proceedings of this August 6th regular council meeting.
Mover, please. Councillor Bjorkman and Deputy Mayor Milosh, all in favor? And one question.
Looking at future meetings here, and I noticed that we have development charge background study on Tuesday, August the 27th. Is there any reason why we didn't have it on Monday, August the 26th?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think we were trying to pick a date in which was ideal for all of administration as well, and then so we suggested the August 27th date to council, and I believe we had a majority responding back. But having said that, August 26th was the second alternative date, if that wasn't good from the council perspective.
So I'm just going to point something out that we've had as a general rule in the past, is that Monday nights is the night that we keep open, don't book anything. You're expected to be here as part of the council for any meetings that we may have. And all of a sudden, this one's on a Tuesday night. There's been a couple of other meetings that have been on odd nights. And it's hard enough that we have a lot of meetings, not just public meetings with us as a group as a councilors, but also with all the other committees that we're on. The mayor and myself are on different committees for county council as well. And it's just, if I can count on having one night of the week where I'm going to have my council meetings for the town of Essex where we meet as a council, I'll always keep Monday nights open. But if we're going to have them random nights, it gets a lot more difficult to plan a life around being on council. And quite typically I do that on Tuesday nights because that's the night where I normally do not have any meetings. So I'm not trying to be hard or anything. I just wondered why we didn't go to the Monday night, which is something that we typically would do. And I was going to ask just you, but I just wanted I wanted consensus from council members too, that maybe I'm being out of line or something by asking that, but I just believe that was the consensus, that we would try and have as many meetings on the Monday nights rather than have them mixed up through the week.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly that's still the intent. That remains the intent, is to, at all possible, try to keep scheduling for those Mondays, those off Mondays. You're absolutely right. We have had a couple circumstances now where we've had to look for alternative dates. Especially a few months ago, we were in a meeting cycle that was very demanding, to say the least. Including a lot of planning, public consultation meetings, things like that, as well as some of the additional special council meetings. So yeah, we were challenged a little bit, but certainly the intent remains the same, to try, these couple instances of a Tuesday meeting, the intent is that they're few and far between, absolutely.
It actually worked out better for me because my youngest granddaughter turns 1 on August 26th.
I agree with what you're saying, Deputy Mayor, because